I was driving my 55 Pontiac yesterday and the engine stalled out going down the road, so I pulled off the side of the road, tried to restart it, wouldn't restart. Starter didn't turn over, there was nothing. Tried the headlights, no headlights either, so my entire electrical system was fried, which sounds like a really terrible thing, but when you lose everything electrical, and you don't have a starter, you don't have headlights, you don't have turn signals, you don't have a horn, you don't have anything, you just need to look for something big that always has power. So something big that always has power is your positive battery cable. Now, if this thing's touching an exhaust manifold or an exhaust pipe or something hot, or it's chafing against something, it'll actually arc to ground as soon as you've got bare copper wire inside this cable that touches a good ground. It'll arc itself to that ground. So you follow this battery cable all the way down to the starter solenoid, and you look for any chafing, anything where it might be touching to metal, and ground it out. So I did that, got underneath there, and I followed it down, and it looked fine. So I'm looking for any other big wire that might be always charged. And there's this guy right here, this yellow wire. So I'm grabbing that, and it was stuck to the steering box. And if you look in there, it's chafed pretty good. So let me remove the starter. I'll show you a better look at that yellow wire. Alright, so 2 volts and the starter is down, and with the starter lowered, I can see better what's going on and what happened. This yellow wire wasn't resting on anything hot, which would melt the insulation, and that's usually what happens. What I did notice though when I tugged on it was it had been fused to part of the steering box, and that's all I could see was this part here. And you can see it's burnt, but that's not from resting on something hot. That's from basically, this yellow wire is constant 12 volt hot right from the battery. And when it touched copper against the ground, which was the steering box, it basically welded itself to the steering box. And I tugged on it and pulled it free. But that's what shorted out my electrical system. Anyway, that's what I need to fix. Get a new terminal lead, cut this about right here, maybe splice in a little bit of heavy gauge wire there, and reconnect that to that, put the starter back in. I should be good to go. Alright, so the starter's in, battery's hooked up, so let's see what happens. Got 2 new battery cables on there, just because I was working in that area. Alright, well, I got courtesy lights, so that's more than I had before. Again, that's coming off that heavy gauge yellow wire off the starter solenoid. Alright, neutral, turn the key, wrong key, it's the trunk key, alright, ignition key. Alright, that's interesting. So I was trying to start. Alright, let's see what's up with that. Got the heavy gauge wire coming from the battery positive post. And you got the heavy gauge cable here going into the starter motor. So if I bridge this gap with these 2 alligator clips on a wire between here and here, it delivers the 12 volts from here to here, which then opens the gap, or closes the gap between these 2, making a solid connection there, which will spin the starter motor. And then the other thing is it'll energize this kicker right here, drawing this in, which pushes the gear forward to engage the flex plate. So those are the 2 things that should happen when you bench check this. And of course, nothing electrical works without a ground, so I've used jumper cables here to ground the body of the starter to a good chassis ground right there, cross member for the transmission. Alright, so this ground up again. That seems good. Put this down right here. Alright. I'll take this and jump it over to here. Okay, that's interesting. So it's trying to kick the gear forward, but it's not, the starter motor's not engaging. So that's not ideal, and explains why when the starter was installed and I tried to start the engine, all I got was noise and no rotation at all. So no rotation from this gear, and you're not going to have any rotation these gears on your flex plate, and your engine's not going to turn over. So that's what we got. Had the starter rebuilt, cost me $54, and let's try this again. Much better. Sweet. Bench check good. Starter's back in. This whole problem started because I was going down the road and I lost all electrical because my main wire coming off the starter solenoid that powers the whole car chafed against the steering box. And the steering box is right there. You can see the red terminal there. But what I did this time was I routed all the wires around the other side. So they come down along the other side of the starter main housing, the body of the starter, and they come down right through here. There's the oil pan. So I don't have any wires running right next to the steering box anymore, which is good. Because if your motor mounts are a little bit loose and your engine kind of, moves around a little bit, on the motor mounts, that's going to be separate from the steering box, which is bolted firmly to the frame. So you can see where you can get chafing there with the engine moving just slightly independently of the steering box. You can get wires chafing against the steering box, and that's what happened. So now I think I've got all the wires and the main battery cable safely zip tied away from anything that could possibly chafe them. And if you noticed, yeah, I do need a dust cover there for my flex plate at the bottom of the bell housing, and I'm not sure where to find one of those. Okay, so new battery cables, and let's see if this will start. Alright, so the 55's back on the road, and I found that dust cover for the bell housing. So that's good. It was in the trunk. So when you buy an old car that's got a whole bunch of stuff stashed in the trunk, you should dig through it and inventory it. But that's good, I'm happy about that.